Welcome back to another episode of the Schmoofcast. You're joined here with Brett.
And Kristen.
And together we are the Schmoofs. Together we have over 20 years experience in the themed entertainment industry, hospitality, theme parks, visiting, working, playing, loving, every aspect of it all. And we're here to share that love with you. On today's episode, we have a topic that we discussed for honestly a future episode, but we decided to bring it up a bit because of current events. And that question is, when does an attraction become untouchable?
Or is there such a thing as an untouchable attraction?
And the reason we're pushing this up in our schedule, honestly, is because there was recent news this week of Disney is actually going to be changing some scenes on the Jungle Cruise. And they're going to be editing some of these, I don't want to know, they're classic scenes on the Jungle Cruise. They really are. This is an attraction that Walt Disney originally worked on way back in the day. And it feels like this is a very almost sacred type attraction that they are now touching.
We've discussed this before for ourselves because of a lot of changes that Disney goes through. Honestly, what brought this up and why we had this scheduled for a future talk was previously we talked about Harmonious, which is going to be the new fireworks evening spectacular coming to Epcot. And we've talked about this a lot, especially as they're starting to get those barges out on the lake.
They're huge.
They look like giant tacos just sitting out there on the water. But for you at least, Illuminations was kind of an end-all be-all show. You saw that show.
I think my final count was nearing 400. And I moved to Orlando in 2011 and I watched it almost 3 or 4 times a week for a few years. Like, I was at Epcot all the time.
I remember we watched it every night 1 week.
Yeah.
Like, we went to Epcot every single night in a week. And it was just probably the show that we would gravitate more towards. And we had a lot of nostalgia to go along with it. Remember seeing it as kids, feeling like Harmonious, which is taking it over. It hurts a little bit. At least I know, for me, it hurts a little bit. I am interested to see what Harmonious is and how it works.
Oh, it's going to hurt no matter what, because we saw the intermediate show, Epcot Forever, and Epcot Forever was, I think it was a dumpster fire.
I don't think it would have been, I don't think it could be considered a bad show. I think compared to the show that it took over for, it was a little rough. But mind you, Illuminations, cost millions of dollars a night to put on.
Million? What? No.
All of the crap that was in it.
Get out of here. But it comes to the point where, was Illuminations untouchable? And obviously not, because they nuked it.
The answer is obviously no. But it just brings up that question of what... There's a lot of attractions nowadays that would be considered cult classics within the Disney fan community. And there's a lot of attractions that the fans haven't accepted just yet, or things like that. And we talked about it in kind of like a life cycle of an attraction. So you have the initial inception of an attraction where it's new and shiny and all of that. People love it or hate it, and it goes from there. If it sticks around long enough, it will be accepted by fans and become a fan favorite. And after it reaches that point for a while, it goes into that cult classic category, if you will. And the question is, when are you allowed to touch the cult classics? And Disney has been making big changes with this because of things like a lot of their recent announcements. But Jungle Cruise is a really big example of maybe there isn't such a thing as an untouchable attraction.
No, and I mean, we'll put this in perspective too. Well, we'll get the elephant out of the room with this, is that they are changing these attractions for the better. They are making them more inclusive. They are removing sexist and racist undertones on a lot of these scenes and some of the stories and some of the sets. They are changing these attractions for the better. We're going to go ahead and mention Pirates when they changed the auction scene to include red, and it's more of auctioning off rum instead of people now. And now they're changing Jungle Cruise. They're removing the racist stereotypes of the tribal people on the attraction. They previously they are changing Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain is notorious for being based off of Song of the South, which is widely regarded as seen as a very racist movie.
It has very strong racial undertones.
So all these changes that Disney is planning are for the better. They are definitely for the better. But it still begs the question, is it untouchable? Is this so... Do you just not touch certain things? We were talking about other attractions that could potentially be under this scrutiny as well for, potential to be touched. We saw that Disney just redid Snow White's Scary Adventures in Disneyland, one of the original opening day 1955 attractions. They decided to go in, they gutted it, and it's now Snow White's Enchanted Wish or something?
I have no idea what the actual title is.
It's based off... It's Snow White. It's a happy Snow White story, no longer a scary story.
So, and the funny thing with this is a lot of it is also just changing perspective. So, you mentioned Snow White. Previously, Snow White's Scary Adventure really focused on the storytelling of the evil queen. That's actually the character that you go through, or you went through as, like you would go through her lair and all of this stuff, see her in the moat. A lot of different parts of it really focused on kind of the villain in that story, as opposed to now where they are focusing on that princess happily ever after. Not that you didn't have that before, but it wasn't the primary focus. So it is a question of when you have things like that and it's a classic attraction. Obviously they don't want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But
they need to keep it updated. And they've done these great updates with these attractions. Like, let's stick at Disneyland for a second. They did some amazing updates to the Dumbo attraction. They did a new queue for it. They gave it a brand new, fresh look. They did some amazing updates to Matterhorn. Matterhorn was... It was honestly... It was a mess. Some people are going to fight me that they preferred the ice crystals up top, but you can't fight me that those new Yeti animatronics are really amazing. It has a fresh new look to it. It has a great new queue. They've updated Alice in Wonderland over there as well. They added projections inside. They updated the kind of the story around it. They added more Alice figures. They made it a more Alice attraction. They updated Peter Pan's flight a little bit as well. They added some more projections and updated the attraction. But in all these cases, they kept the feel and they kept the true story of the attraction alive. And that is what they're going to be doing to Jungle Cruise, per everything that they have said. Now, according to also these press releases, they are aware that the new Jungle Cruise movie is coming out, and they've already addressed that these changes will not be related to the upcoming movie with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
that makes me happy. Just because, like, I love Pirates of the Caribbean, and I love the movie franchise. I thought it was great. I'm a big Pirates fan. By adding in a movie-specific, like, by adding Jack Sparrow into any of the pirate incarnations that we currently had.
Captain Jack Sparrow.
I hope you guys all can hear the eye roll that just happened. But it really does change the story and the timeline within that attraction. A lot of people aren't going to realize that, but it previously was meant to be like you were just going down and you saw, as time went on, the destruction of this fort that was happening. Like it was all supposed to kind of make sense as you go through, but by adding Jack into each scene, it suddenly makes it where the time doesn't make any sense. Like,
time just progresses, like out of blue thin air. It just is like, oh, we're flying along now. Before, it was everything happening. The town's getting ransacked. You go through the town as it's being ransacked. Mm-hmm. Everything can be happening at the same time. Now it's progressing through the evening, through the night, as Jack is trying to find this treasure.
I don't know. It still doesn't make any sense to me. It just feels like they put Jack Sparrow in.
Yeah. But, one of the big things about this is we're discussing, like, when does the attraction become a classic? Like, do you consider Soarin' on the same level as Big Thunder Mountain as a classic attraction?
But I also think that so there's a second part to this question.
Mm-hmm.
Does the status of an attraction change once it gets an update? Because if you were to ask me, is Soarin' over California better than Big Thunder, I would say yes. If you ask me, is Soarin' around the world a better attraction than Big Thunder, I would say no. It's the same attraction, but because of the change that they made, I don't think it was for the better. That it reset that where that attraction was with me. I would have said that it was a cult classic before. Now it just kind of falls into the still waiting for fan acceptance.
It is never going to get fan acceptance. It has the general guest acceptance, But the general guest is like, yeah, we're flying, that's great. The Disney fans, the one who've experienced before, the guests who experienced it before, it's missing the emotion now. But that's a discussion for another topic, another podcast.
But I think another great example of the question of, when you get a facelift like this, does it restart where that attraction is it in its life cycle, is the characters that were added to It's a Small World at Disneyland. If you've been to Disney World, Small World is just the Small World dolls. You go around the countries and everything like that. It is very true to the original. At Disneyland, and I believe this is also in Tokyo?
Tokyo, yes.
They did a change where they updated it to include Disney characters from different countries around the world. So, for example, when you're in Italy, you see Pinocchio, or when you're
Three Caballeros are in the South American scene.
Yeah, they're...
Alice is in the UK scene. Like, the characters correlate to their locations where their story takes place, which is great. It's wonderful. It's all done in the Mary Blair style. It looks great.
And they have a little, ode to it. So you have the Small World song going, but for each time you get closer to a character, they have a Small World style clip of music from that character's movie. So it is kind of just a little bit of an ode, and it made a change. But I would say now that Small World with the characters is just as fan accepted as original Small World was.
I wouldn't say fan accepted per se. Twitter's going to crucify us for saying that this is fan accepted, but I'll take
Twitter
it.
can be Twitter.
I honestly, I really enjoy the characters of Small World quite a bit. The only thing I don't enjoy about the Small World update that they did to Disneyland is they added an Americas scene.
Oh, yeah.
With cowboys and Hollywood and stuff, and it's weird. It doesn't
seems
belong.
out of place.
It's so out of place. But that's the only really gripe with it. The rest of them are great. The characters fit in well. I can see them adding it to ours. I mean, obviously they added it into Tokyo, like we said, and Tokyo is the exact same Small World layout that we have at Walt Disney World. So it makes no sense as to why they couldn't do it at Walt Disney World. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, please. But I don't know if that resets the timer on it. I think that Small World in itself is never going to be touched. I don't think there's a reason to touch it. I think that there is so much history and so much... and not just theme park history, but the Disney Animation Studio, the early Walt Disney stuff, history behind this attraction, that they would be out of their minds to really just hey, we're getting rid of Small World.
Well, that also asks, or it brings up the point, there's a difference between untouchable and irreplaceable.
Yes, absolutely. You can touch and update. They're doing it right now at Disneyland. You can touch and update Haunted Mansion, but you can't remove it. It can't be replaced. There's no way. I mean, obviously they tried with Hong Kong and they got Mystic Manor out of it, which by all accounts everybody says is an amazing ride. I'm not discrediting that, but I'm saying that you just can't replicate the original magic that is the Haunted Mansion. You wouldn't build an Omnimover ride through a visual tricks on your eyes Haunted Mansion experience nowadays. This would not get approved. This would not happen. There's no way.
A House of Illusion.
It wouldn't. If you took that idea to Bob Wise, head of Imagineering right now, and said, hey, we're going to do this in 2021, he'd be like, and what movie does it relate to?
You sound bitter.
A little bit. It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen nowadays. I mean, same thing at half the stuff at Epcot nowadays. It just would not happen. You talk Living with the Land built back then. That would not happen by any account. They would not build a Grand Fiesta Tour nowadays.
But the funny thing is when you talk about these attractions, yes, they might fall into that irreplaceable category, but they've all been touched. They've been modified. Living with the Land used to have the live spieler on it. They do lots of things nowadays to keep it so the greenhouses are up to date, including holiday layovers and things like that. They have changed it from what it originally was.
So which of these old, considered untouchable attractions has not been really touched then? The only thing that really comes to mind, I mean, people are going to say Carousel of Progress. No, that's been changed immensely, a lot.
Continually, but that's the point of it. You have to remember that final sequence didn't always include
Yeah, it changed a lot over the years.
VR and all of that stuff.
And there was a time when it opened at Walt Disney World that it had a different song.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Now is the best time.
That's a very, very, like, weird thing. I cannot wrap my head around that. But I think one of the big ones that we talk about, I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact of untouchability versus irreplaceability, but, like, Space Mountain. Space Mountain is something, what they've really done to it is minor cosmetic work. They haven't changed a great deal of that attraction. Well, they've
changed the queue,
replaced
they've changed the exit, they have done a few things to it. But as he's right, as we've seen in past years, cosmetics inside.
And it's just little things. It's nothing that would be crazy. They had to replace the track because, I mean, let's be honest, it was 40 years old. And it's a steel track. It needs to, in Florida, they need to be...
It was a while ago and they
changed out for safety reasons. But honestly, one of my favorite things about that particular attraction that I hope they never change is that one of the way that they get the star effects is there's literally just disco balls with spotlights. That's like my favorite thing about that attraction is the fact that that's the kind of technology we're using here, friends. Disco balls and spotlights.
And it works. We've talked to people that have actually worked at Space Mountain that said that they previously tried projection effects in the mountain. The projection effects they've attempted to use them for like Starfield and stuff, which there's a few in the mountain up top, but nothing down below because the projections don't work as well as the disco balls.
The disco balls are great.
Yeah. And just one of those archaic things that just works. But I would consider Space Mountain to be very touchable, though. I wouldn't consider.
I guess that's. I just don't know. I guess I'm confused. I'm wondering what we consider touchable, updateable, or removable.
You can't remove Space Mountain, but I wouldn't be mad if we got the Disneyland track in our Space Mountain. I wouldn't be mad at all.
Disneyland's better.
Or both of them are great for their own needs. I mean, like, let's look at, like, Peter Pan's Flight. Obviously, Peter Pan's Flight is irreplaceable. So much so that they recreated the entire attraction to be placed into Shanghai Disneyland.
They had to reimagine the entire attraction.
Yeah.
For the people that they foresee going to that park.
It looks great.
The family dynamics.
But, I mean, as for us here, I can never see us getting rid of Peter Pan on either coast. But I do see them updating it. And, I mean, part of we're talking about this entire inclusivity. There are some sketchy scenes in both versions of Peter Pan's Flight that deal with insensitive depictions of the Native Americans. And I know it's right from the movie. I'm not saying the movie's right or wrong either. I'm just saying, like, this is not how they should be interpreting people moving forward in these attractions.
I could see them making changes on that end. I think it would be sad to lose the representation completely, but having a appropriate representation would also be a very big difference within those sequences. And it's a very small part. I mean, let's be honest, the attraction itself is 30 seconds long.
It's a small part, and they can do what they did with Disneyland, where they have Tiger Lily is in the water in front of Skull Rock. But we don't need the entire scene with the drummers and the pipes and all that. Like,
and the chief.
It's a little weird, especially nowadays. If they remove that portion, are people going to get as upset as they got about Splash Mountain?
I don't get the backlash that has happened with Splash Mountain. I understand that a lot of people have grown up not realizing that it was connected to Songs of the South or not knowing what Songs of the South was. Let's be honest, Disney is never going to release that movie again. And there is something sad about that because a lot of the actors of color received a lot of awards for the work that they did on that movie.
Let me retrace that though. They didn't receive actual awards. They received honorary awards because at that point black actors could not receive them, which is also part of the undertone of, come on.
Yes. So there are a lot of bits in that, but it is kind of, it's a give and take. You do want to make it so that that's not a big part of the community. It's not a big part of the park and everything like that. But I know that there's a lot of people that grew up just thinking, oh, it's Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox.
That's how I grew up.
I know. You had no idea what Songs of the South was.
No, I had to research it. I've watched the movie myself. The movie is not good. It's really not. I mean, I didn't like any of those live-action Disney movies during that time period anyway, but this is just particularly just off the deep end. It's weird. And
it's a weird watch.
By today's standards, it is not watchable. I know everybody's like, oh, I've never seen it, I want to watch it. No, you don't.
I wouldn't recommend it.
But moving forward with Splash Mountain and to retheming it to Princess and the Frog, I think that's a great idea.
I'm really excited for it, but I'm also very apprehensive for it because they said it's not a retelling and it's going to be timed after the film, and I just don't know where they plan to go with it from there. But I would have loved to have seen it follow the story.
And get some Dr. Facilier going.
Are you kidding? Being pushed over the falls by the Shadow Man with his dark spirits.
It'd be great.
It'd be freaking awesome.
But, I mean, they've already said it's after the fact, so Facilier is already long gone. Who knows? He might be back.
No.
Please come back, Facilier.
This is my problem. This is like... Princess and the Frog is one of the movies in and of itself, like one of the Disney movies, that you see some actual, like, legitimate character death.
Yeah.
Like, you have Ray who passes, you have Dr. Facilier, and these are integral characters to that story that once they tell you that it's going to be timed afterwards, if they try and bring them back, it just completely destroys the story in and of itself. Like, it just throws the whole thing in the air. And I know a lot of people aren't going to care about that, but I care about that because I care about storytelling.
Yeah, you can't just bring Ray back. But Splash Mountain was there. When did Splash open? Early 90s, right? Splash has been there forever. It was like really one of the first attempts at putting another thrill ride into the park. And I know it was all Tony Baxter's idea from Disneyland to reutilize animatronics from America Sings at Disneyland, but then it got transplanted here to Disney World as well. And it's a more thrilling ride.
89.
89 at Disneyland, right?
At Disneyland.
And then 93 here?
92.
92. Okay, so
92 at Tokyo and here.
And it added a water ride, and it's almost as old as every Disney fan I know. We're right into that area.
I mean, you have to think about it. If you're thinking about it in terms of how long it's been like that, it's been like that for as long as Hollywood Studios has existed.
Yeah. It's just a long time, and Hollywood Studios has seen a lot of changes in that time period. I want to relate this Splash Mountain change happening in this time frame to how people felt about imagination changing in the early 90s, I think, right? Yeah. When it changed from imagination to Journey into Your Imagination. That was a gut punch. That was a huge demolishing a classic Untouchable attraction and replacing it with something potentially lackluster. I'm not saying that Princess and the Frog is going to be lackluster, but, Imagination was potentially untouchable, at least if you listen to everybody else on social media today.
There's just so many different aspects to it. And I do want to talk more about just Jungle Cruise. So Jungle Cruise is
a garbage attraction that I don't know why it still exists in the Disney parks.
You solidly hate Jungle Cruise, which I think is hilarious. But the idea of them changing it, I think that there's a lot of really good that can go into that. I think that if they were to do like the concept art of having a scene of a bunch of monkeys loading onto a sunken boat, that's hilarious. It's
very Mark Davis almost. It's great. Like the two pieces of concept art they revealed so far look extremely promising. And Mr. Lively, I think it's Kevin Lively. I could be wrong. I'll change that later if it's wrong. But he is spearheading this project, and the dude is a total Jungle Cruise nerd. Like his entire Twitter and everything he's basically done has all been related to Adventureland. So if they're putting somebody in charge of this project that knows, lives, breathes, and loves the theme and the story, there's going to be a really good outcome here. It's going to be great.
I'm excited for it. I'm excited because it is also something that it needs help.
It does.
It's not just that, don't get me wrong. The big thing is the depictions that they have of Native people within that attraction are really rough. But the attraction itself also needs help.
They said this is a twofer. This is a removal and update and a refreshing. Now, I hope, because we have over at Disney World, we have a entire tunnel system, a cave, temple. That's the word, temple.
It's a temple.
So over in Tokyo, they have a very similar temple, and they added projection effects inside of their temple, which look really amazing. If you have a chance to look up the Tokyo Disneyland Jungle Cruise on YouTube, highly recommend it. It is really cool what they did. I'm hoping that we see that happen here as well with some of the projection effects inside of our tunnel. So there is potential. There's huge potential to do something interesting with this attraction. And is it untouchable? No, absolutely not. The attraction in its current state is actually not the attraction that Walt Disney created back for Disneyland. Back in the day, we'll say, the attraction was actually meant to look at the animals as if they were real and not this fake
sarcasm
driven towards the jungle.
Which is funny because they've really expanded the world in which they live, right? This whole idea of the Jungle Cruise has expanded now to Trader Sam's, tiki bars on both coasts, Skipper Canteen, and all of these things. And it has evolved well past what it started as. And that happened naturally. It's just, it makes sense for the attraction to keep up with the evolving world that's been created around it.
And it's great. They've taken this story, which is the 1930s, 20s and 30s, the European explorers traveling to these uncharted lands and having some wacky hijinks. And they took the idea from this potentially just very misunderstanding, racy undertone, and they brought it through the years, and especially with, let's say, Trader Sam's and Skipper Canteen. It's this funny, playful humor of being like, oh yeah, it all tastes like chicken. We don't actually know what it is, but the food all tastes like chicken, so don't worry about it. Or, I was going to say Headhunter here, but there's a few things that are definitely Headhunter references that I wonder if they're going to keep.
Don't know.
I mean, Trader Sam specifically has all those shrunken heads. And the shrunken zombie head is a staple drink at Trader Sam's. But they've already said that they do not have any plans to touch Trader Sam's or Skipper Canteen.
Which I really don't know if they need to. Because again, as those have been newer developments, they have been more aware in terms of the audience. They have been more inclusive. They have been more considerate in how they're depicting things. So
it's a more playful tone. It's not just throwing random. It's not just throwing random black animatronics in there that are attacking a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the quickest way, the easiest way to say it. It is a much more
appropriate,
considerate,
understanding, considerate,
playful. Like they had the entree at Skipper Canteen of the heads on shrimp. Remember that? Mm-hmm. As compared to the heads off. That was fun.
The headhunter roll.
Oh yeah, headhunter roll over at
Trader Sam's.
Trader Sam's, that they give you a hibiscus red sauce to pour on top that looks kind of like blood.
It's a very odd thing. But the funny thing, funnily enough, is it's also something that if you've been on the Jungle Cruise recently, most skippers won't address those scenes as they're happening, which is a big difference. It used to be like get down, get down, get down. No, guys, this is my boat. You're looking for the boat behind me. Like those kind of things for pranks and stuff. But for a lot of those scenes now, they aren't even really acknowledged as they go through. So as they're updating, that's a big win for them to gain back essentially usable attraction space.
Yeah.
That is appropriate.
I'm very excited to see what they do with it all. And I mean, a sunken boat in the water, that it kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies here with mechanics in a water. That's weird to me.
Why?
in the same way, like Finding Nemo submarine voyage really like creeps me out because there's that gigantic anglerfish underwater, and that really bothers me for some reason. Like thinking about old 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with all that stuff underwater, I just like it. I get really uneasy thinking about that stuff. Like it creeps me out.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't like it at all.
Huh.
Like I brought up the mermaids from Pirates of the Caribbean on Twitter the other day too, and that was a creepy effect. Even though it was just a projection, some bubbles, and a splash, it was a creepy effect, and it really bothered me a lot.
Sometimes you are so weird.
There's probably a name for this.
Being afraid of things in water? I'm sure there is a name for it. It's not something I realized you had an issue with until this moment. Yeah. But,
Sunken mechanic phobia or something? Whatever. But I think that Jungle Cruise is not untouchable. And as far as I'm concerned, touch it. Please, just get rid of it. I hate Jungle Cruise so much.
Do you think that there is anything that falls into the category of untouchable? Is that a real thing?
Yes. But again, it's irrelevant already because these attractions have been updated and upkept throughout the years. My biggest one is the American Adventure. I think the American Adventure is a very mature and adult retelling of some of America's greatest hardships and how we have progressed as a nation through those hardships. And I think it is a wonderful attraction. It is probably one of the best shows that Disney has ever built for a theme park. And it is very underrated. But they've done some updates to it throughout the years. They've updated the finale song a few times. They've updated the finale video montage a few times. But the overall script, the dialogue, the characters, the sets has been largely untouched. And I don't think the attraction is touchable.
I think it's funny because for me, that attraction encompasses a lot more than the show. And one of my favorite things is the gallery that they have in the lobby of the American Adventure. And that is actually something that for the longest time was not changed. It stayed the same. It was very stagnant. And then the last couple of years, they have been very active in terms of updating that gallery to be more inclusive, to show different parts of the American story that they don't necessarily show in the show.
They did a few years ago, they did a Black History Museum, which was wonderful. It was like lifting Black voices. It was a really awesome experience. Most recently has been a Native American exhibit of showing the different Native Americans from all across the states and how they are alike and different at the same time. And it
also really points out different tribes and the breakdown of those tribes in different areas. So across like the Southwest or the Northeast, and that's a really, really cool thing to see. And I think a lot of people don't have a lot of understanding of where those tribes are sitting.
Yeah, I know I didn't, and I probably still don't. I mean, I won't remember that stuff, but it is fascinating to look at, to understand, to experience. And then they just announced that they're doing a jazz based on Soul, the new movie from Pixar. They're doing a jazz-inspired exhibit that's coming February.
I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, it should be cool. It should be really awesome. But that's my untouchable. Somebody on Twitter mentioned that they think that Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln is untouchable. And I'd like to put that in the same realm as Small World because, World's Fair and all that. But I still want to think that, you know what? No, I don't think there's any way to change it.
I don't think there is either. I would agree with that. I would agree if there's one attraction that I think would be untouchable besides the cosmetics, besides the, technology has advanced far enough that we can make this animatronic seamless, or projections can be updated, or all of those things. Besides those cosmetics, I would agree. Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln is untouchable. I would say that is the only attraction, in my opinion, that should always remain as it is. And part of that is because of the history, right? The history not only of Lincoln, but also that Walt Disney greatly admired Lincoln. That attraction was built explicitly to Walt Disney's specifications because of how he wanted to have this great man of history portrayed in his parks. So I would agree with that. I think that it is an attraction. And it does help that it is on Main Street. It's not meant to be anything besides a turn-of-the-century attraction. Mm-hmm. It has this really special idea of where it is that doesn't require it to be touched. You know, if it was in... We've seen it here with Hall of Presidents. That's something that has to be and will continually and constantly be updated. But the show itself has changed. The idea, the speeches, those have changed throughout the years and will continue to change.
Yeah.
But I don't... and part of that is with it being where it is in Liberty Square and just the ideology behind that attraction. But I do think that Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln is probably the only...
the only untouchable.
The only untouchable attraction.
Oh, we have a note here saying, though, that Roger Rabbit is an untouchable attraction. Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin from California designed.
We debate this quite a bit in terms of is it untouchable because if they touched it, they would kill it and it deserves to live? Or is it untouchable because it would never be done again? Is it untouchable because it's irreplaceable, or is it untouchable because of the fact that if they touched it, they would get rid of it and it should stay?
So let me throw it out there to start with. I would rather them just get rid of Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin entirely than update it or touch it. I think it is a perfect attraction. It is the best modern day Fantasyland style dark ride that they've ever done. It was Disney's first attempt at putting the teacups on wheels, and it worked. More than that, it was really their first time of not telling the guests where to look in an attraction. You ride Haunted Mansion, you ride Pirates of the Caribbean, your attention's focused in front of you, or they turn the vehicle so that you're facing a certain way. With Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin, they say, here's the wheel, turn it how you want to.
It does force it to be a fully inclusive attraction, which I think is amazing. I personally love that the film is represented in the park. I think that that's a really great thing. I think it's a great thing for Toontown to have a bigger attraction back there, because it does force traffic, if you will, to the back of the park, which is a good thing. And at least for now, I'm sure that that's going to change once Runaway Railway opens.
I was going to say, they're getting Runaway Railway, so this entire topic of untouchable or updatable or irreplaceable is going to be very relevant for Roger Rabbit soon.
Yeah, because once they have another attraction that's really forcing through that traffic and wait times and all of that going on back there, the question will really become, is it needed? And like you said, I do think it's a great ride. It's something that we ride every time we're at Disneyland at least once. But it is something that you feel its age. So I don't know. I would love to see a change to it. I don't know what that change would be. But I think it'd be awesome to be able to keep it in the park while updating it. I think that technology's come a long way from when it was built, that you have so many options on how to tell that story. But I would be afraid of them touching it, because I would be afraid they'd choose to get rid of it.
They did so many creative things with the limited technology and limited, just the ability back then that was so limited with what they could and could not do, that they had to use light and they had to use mirrors and everything else to their advantage. I don't think they could do it again. But prove me wrong, because Runaway Railway is amazing. So
I know, that's the thing of, like, we talk about this, and I'd mentioned previously where I was like, you know what, I would love to see Roger Rabbit go to the same trackless style that you see in Runaway Railway and you see in Rise of the Resistance. I think that would be really interesting, and a really interesting way to tell that story. It's just, it's hard to say. That particular attraction is hard. I do not think that it is untouchable. I think that if it is touched, it'll be removed.
Yeah, it'll be gone. It won't be like, we're going to update it. No, it'll be like, nope, Roger Rabbit's gone.
So that's something a little different.
I'm trying to think of anything modern day that I would consider untouchable. I would think Kilimanjaro Safaris would be untouchable.
I think that's cheating.
Is it cheating? All right, let's say
it's a reserve. It is literally a wildlife reserve. There's not a lot they can change.
They just added goats. They removed the story.
They can add
If you told me, like, okay, Disney's shutting down Kilimanjaro Safari's Animal Kingdom, you'd be like, what? It's an attraction that is never going to be touched. It is going to be there until the world ends.
Not a zoo.
Period. Dot. Like, there's never going to get rid of it. Like, I can see them getting rid of Great Monsters of Mr. Lincoln or American Adventure. Like, these things I can see them like, yeah, eventually get rid of. They will never get rid of Kilimanjaro Safaris.
They can't.
That's it. That's why it's irreplaceable, untouchable. It is an untouchable attraction. Period. Dot.
So I feel like that's just cheating.
It's not cheating.
It's a wildlife reserve. What are they going to do?
I would...
remove all the animals?
It's Florida. It's fine. Just let them go. Who cares?
Just let them go.
I would say that, for the longest time, I thought that Dinorama was untouchable, too. That was proven wrong this past month or so. Provincial World has closed their roller coaster, for those of you who don't know that.
Closed, just putting it lightly.
Yeah.
Gone to extinction is really the way to say it.
It's gone. It's dead. I would typically say, our tower... I think the Epcot architecture, that was untouchable. Like, they can keep changing interior of Spaceship Earth or the interior of the Land Pavilion or Imagination how many times they want, but they're never going to get rid of those glass pyramids or the geodesic sphere. That's just never going to happen. They will never demolish Spaceship Earth.
No, that look wasn't for Spaceship Earth. That was definitely for Journey.
No, it's iMage. Who cares about iMage?
But no, I think that it's a really interesting way to think about Disney attractions, or attractions for any theme park, to be honest.
I mean, we'll talk about Universal for a second, too. At Universal, I don't think that anything is held in such a sacred, untouchable light as much as E.T. Adventure.
I was going to say, as long as E.T. keeps chucking along, it's going to go further and further into that category.
Yeah. The longer that E.T. has been around... I mean, Hollywood ripped out E.T. a long time ago, and that was considered really taboo at that point because it was a classic attraction. I would have considered Jaws over here to be into the untouchable attraction type period too, but that was easily picked up and just thrown to the side. E.T. has been around so long at this point. Everybody loves it. Everybody rides it. Everybody knows who it is. It is untouchable. I want to say it's unupdateable too.
I think it's unupdateable just for the simple fact that if they try to do anything in there, the entire building might crumble.
Yeah, that's it. 100%. You can't update the infrastructure. It is archaic, but it is wonderful in what it accomplishes.
I mean, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It is a great kind of extension to the story, accessible to all viewers, if you will.
There's no height requirement, right?
There's no height... Well, there might be a height requirement. I don't think you can take babies on it.
Oh, probably not.
I assume that there is a height requirement for it. What it is, I can't tell you, but I know it's shorter. I know it's not something that you are bringing an infant on.
Well,
yeah. But there's so many just different bits of that. And I think it's funny. Universal has does a really great job of constantly updating that they don't really worry about having an untouchable category. They don't worry about things becoming cult classics or things like that because of the fact that their cult classics are their events.
Yeah. No,
Mardi Gras, Horror Nights.
I mean, Mardi Gras kicking this will be 26 years this year. Horror Nights is going on 30 years. You don't touch these events. Like last year canceling Horror Nights, it was a big deal. It was like saying there's no Christmas this year. It was like, excuse me?
That's coming from us. Like, we're not extensively long Horror Nights fans, but it is something that is considered a staple in the Orlando Halloween season.
Yeah, it's big. This is going to sound stupid, but their Horror Nights is as important to their park as, say, Pirates of the Caribbean is to Magic Kingdom.
Which is great, because it's something that it constantly changes, but the idea behind it stays the same. But that's what we're talking about in terms of Universal really works to not have untouchable things, because the fact that you aren't going to get the same Horror Nights house. You're not going to get that. Is the fact that you're getting Horror Nights an untouchable staple within Universal? Yes. Is getting Mardi Gras an untouchable staple at Universal? Yes. I would say they are more untouchable than 98% of the attractions that are there all year round.
And they have no problem just being like, okay, an attraction's done, buy this new one coming soon. No problem doing that.
No.
Which it's both good and bad, but it also adds to that, is there a long enough time for one of them to become a classic attraction?
But some of them are instant classics, because you look at things like the Harry Potter attractions, especially the Hogwarts.
Yeah, Forbidden Journey. Forbidden Journey is considered a universal classic attraction at this point.
And it's only like a decade old now?
Yeah, just over 10 years.
Give or take. I remember going on that the year it opened and being so confused by life. I'd never been on anything like that attraction.
Yeah, there's still nothing like it.
So I think that that's something that's probably the closest, besides E.T., that Universal has for an untouchable attraction. But it's also only been around for 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's the funny thing, where a lot of these Disney attractions that we've talked about, these are attractions that have been around for like 40, 30,
they've been around since our
years.
parents were kids and visiting.
And a lot of it might be that too. Like, is something untouchable because your parents told you it was their favorite ride growing up? And you want to experience it, and you want your kids to experience what your parents experienced? Like, does it become a generational thing? There's so many... It's just a fascinating thing to me. And it is something that is pretty uniquely Disney. As we were just saying, like, Universal works hard not to do it. They are constantly updating or changing. I mean, just look at the Velocicoaster.
Yeah.
Brand new.
But, like, nothing... It's weird. Nothing is really sacred at Universal except for E.T. and Horror Nights. Disney, there's a fan for everything at Disney. And God forbid you look at an attraction the wrong way, you're going to have 10 people down your throats.
There's so many pieces to it, which I find really fascinating. It's also the flip side of that is having the new things that they've come out with. The new things they've had have been great. Like, we've seen a lot of really great things come out of Disney for attractions. So maybe these new attractions, the question is, are these new attractions going to fall through that same category to where they become untouchable or irreplaceable?
Well, if you talk to the wrong person, you're going to find that Rise of the Resistance is untouchable because they can't get a boarding group. But I think, honestly, they're building these attractions to last. They're building these gigantic facades. They didn't build Pandora, the entire Avatar land, to be here for 10 years. They built it for 50 years. They built it more. Yeah, they built it for like, this is an end-all be-all type deal. This is the attractions. I feel the same way about Galaxy's Edge.
So I guess that's the major difference, is that these attractions are being built to be here for the next couple decades, at least, and trying to figure out how that works into expanding. And when they do need to do these changes, like they're doing at Epcot, where they are making some big changes to the park itself, the question always becomes, well, what can they touch versus what can't they touch? Obviously, they can touch anything they want, but it's a weird thing. So many different nuances.
Yeah, there's a lot of angles here, and I apologize that this podcast is going for like an hour long at this point. Food for thought. What do you think is untouchable? What is your untouchable attraction? I know I put it out there on Twitter, but I'd like to hear your opinion. Like, what in... Now
that you've heard our opinions.
Yeah. Well, what is your ride? What is your show? What is your go-to that you're sad they got rid of, or they're never going to touch, or you hope they don't touch?
You're going to hate this answer.
Doesn't need to be Disney. Doesn't need to be Universal. You could say Wild Arctic at SeaWorld for all I care.
Oh, gosh, no. No, for me, a show... I think is personally one of the hardest things, and what I hope Disney continues to keep, Festival of Lion King. That is my favorite show. I know you don't like it. That doesn't matter. It is a phenomenal show. It has great rewatchability. Obviously, Disney agrees with that because they're bringing it back.
It's the first, second big show to bring it back. So, yeah, no, I agree. But it was so untouchable that they actually built another theater for it to move it out of the land for Pandora into Harambe.
Correct.
So I will give that to you. Yeah, that's good.
That would probably be my one. And I would I'm still open to that, quite obviously. I mean, they did cut it when they were looking to cut entertainment across all of Walt Disney World. So I have an understanding that it could go away at any time. But for me, if I could hope to have one thing be untouchable and irreplaceable, it would be Festival of Lion King. But then let us know, is there certain things that you think are irreplaceable that you would love to see an update to? That's also something I am dying to hear about. So hit us up on our social media. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube at the Schmoofs. Or you can probably follow Brett on Twitter at Schmoofy for even more ridiculous content. But I think
it's been a week of content.
But I think that's all we have for now. So thank you for sticking with us this long, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for listening, friends. Signing out for the night, and this is Brett.
And Kristen.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.